Hello, guys. How are you?
Hey, how's it going?
Yes. I'm good. How's it going, everybody?
Before me today, I have two of some of the most talented men in the sequential art space in comics and manga. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Frederick L. Jones and Newton Lillavois, or Lillavoy. I'm so sorry. Always
You
pronounce your name so
said
wrong.
you said it right the first time.
Oh, okay. I had it. Love that for me.
Yeah,
How are you
little
gentlemen doing today?
good, good.
Yeah, good. Yeah, busy but
Wonderful.
good.
Always busy.
Yeah,
Um, and for the people who aren't really familiar with what you do in the space, I know we've been gassing you up, but go ahead and drop a little bit about what you're doing in the space and who you are.
Well, yeah, my name is Newton Lavoie. I'm the writer and creator of Crescent City Monsters and Keisha Demon Eater. I'm the co-creator for Shattered Visions. Yep, there you go. And so I've been fortunate enough to uh, team up recently with TJ Sterling for Shattered Visions, which is always, a great book to talk about too. But as you can see, I'm known for Keisha and Crescent City Monsters. Started off with Crescent City Monsters and then posted a picture of Keisha, and then all of a sudden people are asking, when's this book coming out? So then we kind of pivot over to Keisha Demon Eater.
Absolutely. And Frederick, give us just a little blurb about yourself as well.
yeah. So, my name is Frederick Jones. I'm the founder and publisher of Saturday AM. Started the company about a decade ago, a little over a decade ago, with the idea, coming from the video game industry. The idea was, the idea was to create manga that was more representative than what we normally see out of Japan. So that meant, as you see here, Clock Striker, which is one of our most popular series. Hammer from Jay Oden, Apple Black, which you had White Manga on earlier. And we have creators literally from New Zealand to Nigeria, from South Africa and Senegal to Denmark and Hungary, from the United Kingdom to the United States, Brazil, Argentina. And the idea was really just to try to bring a sense for young people, the hope that they can create manga and not have to be from Japan, not have to talk about a culture that maybe they themselves don't represent, and can have authentic conversations about what we look like and what we think, and the heroism that we have in our own communities. And I think that was really important for us, considering how big manga is becoming.
Absolutely. And that's such an important mission. Also, by the way, Newton, I do have, just so you guys can see, Shattered Visions. This is what this looks like. I keep that thing on me, maybe.
Oh, yeah, thanks for showing that.
Yes, of course. So today's panel, I think, is so suited for the two of you gentlemen. You two are some of the most talented writers within this space. I don't feel even the slightest bit dodgy about that. I think that anyone who is saying otherwise is clearly not has not read your books. Um, and because of your talented writing, you guys do something that's both a skill and also just something that you just have truly a knack for, and that's incredible storytellings, but specifically through the characters that you write. So that's basically the title of today's panel, and what we'll be focusing on is telling compelling stories through the characters that you create. So without further ado, we'll get started with the first question, which I'll ask to both of you. What do you think makes a compelling character?
Uh, for me, and what I tell all of our creators, the position that I'm in with Saturday is that I create, I write some of our stories. I wrote and created Clock Striker, of course, which showed earlier. But
Mhm.
I publish and edit quite a few of our titles. And I think the thing that I always try to articulate to our people is that compelling characters are characters that are vulnerable, uh,
Mm.
because it's so reflective of the human circumstance. Characters that have to struggle to achieve things. Stanley had this great line once about how great characters are characters that as a writer that you're going to put through hell, right? Like no one wants to read about a character that's perfect. And that's why Batman's always more popular than Superman. Spider-Man's more popular than Captain America, because there's an inherent idea of people being able to imprint and appreciate a journey that really starts with a character who has flaws, a character who's not perfect. And I think that, for us, that's always been something that I really advocate, is characters that have some sort of vulnerability. And of course, since we push diversity so much in our work, that's another thing I've been really strong about. We constantly get attacked for it, but I think that being true to our communities means that you have to be honest about what our communities go through. And so it's not about necessarily having, the porn of, and I mean porn, metaphorically, but the idea of the porn of like trauma, right? I get that people don't want to see about or read about Black people who struggle. But at the end of the day, I don't think that you can have the majesty of the Black experience if you don't talk about the struggle that we deal with. So I think that having those things in storytelling for me is really important for characters.
Yeah, I agree with Fred. And to kind of just piggyback on what he's saying is you have to make your characters as human as possible, right? And even when you think about a character like John Wick, right? He seems kind of superhuman, right? He's like kicking ass. He's almost indestructible, right? But they do show you the human side of him, right? All the connections he's made as an assassin, right? All the friends, even in that world, like there's still some kind of human connection, even though it's a world where people are out murdering each other and you can't trust anybody, right? And then especially in the beginning with his wife and then his dog being killed, right? It just shows you how human he is, even though he's doing these extraordinary things. So I think that's what makes a really good character. Really good characters are characters who are very human. One of the things that I think a writer should have is the ability to empathize, right? And not sympathize, but empathize, right? You can, you meet people and you kind of like understand the path that they're taking, right? And you by seeing that, you can also incorporate a lot of that into your own stories, right? Because empathetic people, when they meet people, they'll understand certain viewpoints and whatnot, and then incorporate that into the character that they're building. So, I think humanizing your characters as much as possible is the best way to create really great characters.
I totally agree with both of you for certain. Empathy is such an important skill to have, as I think, as people, but also in writing as well. You both have touched on this already, but I would like us to kind of go a little bit deeper here. How do you guys approach creating the characters for your projects?
I think for me, I always start with the diversity angle. I think, I have this line I use inside of Saturday AM and to a lot of young folks who participate in our tournaments and our submission events and stuff. And again, this is unique to manga, so I have to. I can talk about comics, but the manga I think is for me where I have the most narrative I can provide. And I think that my thing is always I tell this line to all of our folks. I'm like, you cannot out Japanese the Japanese. I don't give a damn what you do. You are not going to out Japanese. You can draw the spiciest haired, big eyed looking character. You're not going to out Japanese them. And you know why? Because at the end of the day, what they understand is their culture, and they understand what really works for decades in that industry. And so with our folks, the diversity for me always is a start of it. What is Batman if not Superman who wears a mask and has no powers? What is Spider-Man if not Batman and Superman if he were a teenager, broke, and had no money? What is, but had powers, right? Like there's always a sort of like element of like, okay, but if, there's this that we understand. And now if I just bring this new idea into it that's diverse, all of a sudden now it's a compelling brand new experience I've never seen before. Batman as an African American. Well, we know what African Americans go through, so automatically I'm already like, oh, okay, wait, but then that's not a Batman where the cops are like, ooh, can we trust him? That's a Batman where the cops are most certainly like, we might have to shoot this brother, because they always are shooting brothers. So I think that I always start with the diversity angle first. I think it's compelling. I think it's really like, it's nothing to be ashamed of. It's always something that if you're true to it, it opens up so many stories. When we did Clock Striker, my victim with Clock Striker, when I created this because most of the manga that we were creating, and again, I'm Black, the company's Black owned, all the co-founders that I added were Black at the time, before we added another person. But, most of the characters they were creating were white. And I kept thinking, I'm like, I don't understand, like, what, like, what's wrong with us being the stars of our story? And the thing always came up is like, well, it would seem forced. And I'm like, there's nothing forced about us. There's nothing forced about us. Naruto is forced. There's nothing forced about us. I've been to Japan several times. I've never seen a blonde-haired, blue-eyed Japanese person. So when I created Clock Striker, the idea was that, well, what's a shonen manga? And it's always typically a boy. It's always typically spiky-haired, heroic boy. And I thought, what's the furthest thing from that I would want to read? I'm not a Black female. So I'm like, I want to see what a compelling young Black female who's smart and plucky, what would her experiences be in a shonen adventure? And that was really the start of creating the title, But so I think for me, I always start with diversity. I'm like, what have I not seen, and what's interesting about that?
Absolutely. And Newton, how do you approach creating characters in your projects?
Yeah, it's that's a good question, because it's a really it's an important question. One of the first things you should ask when creating your characters. The first thing I do is I give them a general sense of like who they are, like what their personality is. Is this a person who's a go-getter and they're immediately going into action, or is this a person who's more of a, hey, you know what, I'm gonna play it safe, kind of personality, so I try to figure out their personality first, right, and then I put them in certain situations and say, okay, how, based on their personalities, how will they react to this situation? So, and then I build it, I build from there. So it kind of like helps once you establish what their personality is, you could and also their motivation. So like, hey, what motivates this person in a particular scenario, right? So you say, well, this person's, maybe this person is a shy person, and in this particular scenario, but they want this one piece, or they want to accomplish this one goal. And so how do they react in that goal, right? Is if it's something that they really want, then they may escape that shy personality and just go for it, right? So you kind of like have to figure out, okay, this is who they are, this is what they want, and given a certain scenario, will that personality change, or will they rise above what constraints you put on them? So for me, when building characters, that's some of the things I take into consideration, their personality and their desires. And then from there, you put them in different scenarios and trying to figure out, okay, well, based on what their personality is and what they want, how do you think they would react in certain situations?
Actually, I think both approaches are totally valid. I think coming at it from just like your own lived experience and looking at how you can bring diversity to a character is great. But I also really like when you kind of think of how a character would show up in your story, kind of thinking about like all the little building blocks that make them them. Really, both really solid approaches. I definitely don't have anything to disagree with. Um, Kind of taking a step in a slightly different direction. For you guys, what are some things that you feel that you should avoid when creating characters for your story? And Newton, if you don't mind, I'll start with you.
So one of the things, and it's kind of hard to do sometimes, especially if you're a fan of whatever you're writing for. One of the things I think you should avoid is using the typical dialogue that you would hear from a TV show or comic book or manga or anime, because you kind of like lapse into it, and some tropes are really hard to avoid, like for example, when when the bad guy has a good guy and the good guy escapes, and the bad guy's like impossible, like, I mean, how many times have you seen that? Right? Like, things like that. Those might be a little bit hard to escape, but sometimes as a fan, sometimes I'll read something and I could tell somebody's kind of regurgitating the dialogue and the thing that they've already heard and listened to. So they're writing from the point of like a fanboy or fangirl. And so I think, trying to create dialogue and situations that are different than what people have seen before. So I think that's one of the things that, I think people should try to avoid, if that makes any sense. Because a lot of times, like I said, not a lot of times, but a few times, I'll read something of somebody's, and you'll see that they're a fan of, I don't know, like a particular show, and you can see it come out in their work, in the way the characters talk and stuff. A lot of it, like, oh, this kind of reminds me of this, So I think that's one of the things to avoid, because in that way, if you avoid that, you can hopefully find your own voice while telling your story. Something that says, oh, when they read it, that, they're like, oh yeah, it's obvious that such and such wrote it. You know what I mean?
No, that's definitely a solid point for sure. And same question to you, Fred. What do you think are some things that you should avoid when creating characters for your story?
Yeah, I agree with Newton. I think that's probably the biggest thing that we see. We do this annual event called Summer of Manga, and I tell our folks that every year we do it. We've been doing it for like 8 years now, and every year we do it. Even though we discover great creators, we discovered this creator. He came. Actually, most of our creators came from Summer of Manga, but Zafe, who did Orasha, which is a great book from us right now. But he was a good example of someone who came through the system of Saturday AM. But I can tell every time we do that event, I can tell what's popular, because the kids who are submitting stuff are basically doing their fanboy or fangirl version of Chainsaw Man, Attack on Titan, Dan to Dan. I'm sure it'll be Dan to Dan this summer. And so you can always tell that that's just kind of the nature of how it works. And I think that, as Newton said, I mean, I think the challenge is always, the thing that we tell people is, I tell them, do a short story. If you really want to do this, do a short story. Just do a short. I don't care if it's 5 pages, 3 pages, 10 pages. Do a short story. Set a date, right? I'm going to do a short story of 10 pages, and I'm going to have it done in 2 months. And then just give yourself the permission to say, and it's going to be a short story where there's a beginning, a middle, and an end. There's no continuation. There's no nothing. I don't care if the story is about a little kid who's trying to get some ice cream and has all these obstacles in their way, or just can't afford the ice cream or whatever. But just come up with the story, because the thing about what the world we live in today is that it is so, especially now with AI, it is so easy to emulate creation, and it's so hard, and always has been hard to actually create. And when all you're doing is doing fan art of popular characters like Dragon Ball, or you're doing stories that are basically your version of Naruto, but cooler, or whatever they would try to say, then you're missing out on all the complexities and frustrations that go into creation. And creation is always a messy experience. And so, yeah, I think, trying to do everything you can to stay away from fangirlism and actually focus on originality is going to be the key.
Hey, Fred, you just gave me an idea for my next comic book. It's going to be called Ice Cream Boy. Search for the 3 flavored ice cream.
Hey, man, hey, do it.
I think both of you guys bring up such good points. I feel like sometimes that's probably why the market may feel oversaturated, or people will feel like, oh, I've already seen that, I already know that, because so many stories kind of have a lot of these similar beats because, they're kind of created in the same era or the same way, or they're clearly inspired by the same
Mhm.
origin. So I totally agree, Newton, when you say that definitely try to create some try to come from a new place or approach things differently. And absolutely, I would love I think creating is such a difficult thing. Sometimes people think it just comes on like a water faucet, but creating something that you're really passionate about, it might be a really cool exercise just to keep it in a little box and just say, I'm going to approach it, we're going to have a start, we're going to have a finish. It's a little challenge.
Funny enough, we actually have a book coming out called Making Manga, and we talk about this, like we talk about this specifically. But inside AM, we have this concept called the storytelling box, and it literally is, once you start creating, I'm literally going to start putting walls up all around you to focus your idea. So when you say, Matt, that's the next Naruto, nope, it's got to be 10 pages. Okay, well, I'm going to, it's going to be taking place in all these different locations. Nope, it's got to be one location. And the more you start locking off all the things that you can do, it focuses your idea into something that's way richer, because you actually now, to your point, have to think. You have to kind of like put restrictions in to focus you to think and make that one thing really, really special. But if you take a sheet of paper to the average person and present it to them and say, do whatever you want, a lot of folks are going to sit there and stare at that paper because the possibilities are endless. So it's like you got to focus that idea. That's the hardest part of creativity, is focusing that idea.
Absolutely. Before we moved on, Newton, just wanted to confirm, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
No. Nothing to add.
Okay, no problem. Um, of course, we've touched on a lot of different things. I do want to ask this question. Both of you guys, for Clock Striker and for specifically Keisha Demon Eater, you guys are you guys are creating characters of not just the opposite gender, but of much younger age. How do you guys approach creating characters that that are so different from
You old.
yourselves?
You
No,
old.
no, 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 no,
You
no.
old. I'm not old. You old.
That young woman called us old, dude.
Oh no, I never said that.
Nah, for me, I have two daughters, so
Mm,
it's not too much of a stretch as to, as to where I could get my inspiration or like reference from. So they're a big point of reference for Keisha Demon Eater. But if I didn't have two daughters, it comes down to, like I said earlier, being empathetic, right?
mm,
Being able to put yourself in other people's shoes and kind of say like, okay, what would their experiences be like? I know the experiences of Black women are way different than Black men, right? Not way different, but a little different, because like my wife, she'll say something and she's like, oh, like she's worried about like, I don't know, walking down in a particular place because of her safety. And I'm thinking, I'm not even thinking of that. I'm not thinking like, oh, I might get hurt, or um uh yeah, I might get hurt or injured by somebody. As a man, you're usually thinking that, that way, but you realize like, oh, okay, so females have, certain perspective on things that you as a man, might take for granted. Like my mother-in-law the other day was talking about like, oh, I think um the guy at the car dealership, oh no, the repair guy is ripping me off because I'm a woman, and then so, and things like that go through their mind. And I'm thinking like, oh, I'm not really I'm not really thinking about things like that because I'm a man. And things like that don't really go aren't crossing my mind in the way it is there. So being able to empathize with that, without which it's kind of a double-edged sword too, because you want to be able to empathize, but at the same time you don't want to stereotype.
mm,
So it's like it's like a fine line. So you want to be able to make sure that you have you have the ability to put yourself in other people's shoes at the same time, not exaggerate a particular feature and just make it stereotypical.
Absolutely. And same question to you as well, Fred.
Yeah.
How do you approach characters like that as well?
Yeah, I think like Newton, I mean, I'm a parent. I've got a young sister who's in her 30s, who I'm super proud of and is really hard working. Although I just kicked her butt in our family bracket for the Instant March Madness. Yeah, and my mother's, really strong and a great woman. I think I've had a lot of female. We have female, staff and employees at Saturday AM, and then we have female. I've had female bosses most of my career. I mean, to me, it wasn't creating Clockstriker wasn't a thing about like I think the key thing I think I would just say that you have to be careful. I think Newton mentioned this is I say this to a lot of our creators, like always be very careful of appropriation versus authenticity.
Yeah.
Appropriation is very easy to fall into. We see it particularly a lot in manga because what you end up with is people looking at an anime and they get really excited, for the anime. It's different from American cartoons. They get seduced by just how vibrant it is, how unique it is, and original it is and stuff. And then they start to imprint that that's what Japanese culture is like. And I can tell you right now that if you go to Japan, like I've done, you ain't gonna see no blue-haired, blonde-haired people there. You might see a few, but it's not gonna be nearly what you see in a manga and anime. And so it's no more instructive to what a Japanese person is reading manga, watching anime, than watching a hip-hop video is to determine how the three of us would behave, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's borderline offensive. And so I think again with Clockstriker and a lot of the titles that we publish or that I've worked on, I've written a title called Yellow String. It's got two female queer leads in it. Another title has got Master Multiplayer of the Ghost, which has a South Asian lead character, a South Asian family. It's the stars of it. And all those come from experiences that I've had with people that I know and love and care about. And I just think that, again, the one way that you're able to not fall into the trap of appropriation is to have there's this line from Sherlock that I use all the time, where in the Benedict Cumberbatch Sherlock, where he would go into his mind palace, and his mind palace is like this ornate mansion that has all the things he's ever seen and recognized. And my thing, and I tell our team always, I'm like, build a mind palace. You can't just create from nothing. Build a mind palace. If all you're doing is consuming manga and anime, you're doing it wrong. Watch British TV. Watch, Tyler Perry. Watch, Spike Lee. Watch, blockbusters from Christopher Nolan, and then watch small independent films from from Wes Anderson. But like, make your palette broad, because when it comes time to create something, all of those experiences are what then inform you with a better idea of what you're creating, a better idea of what this person would be like. You're basing it off of experiences. And if you limit your experiences, if all you ever have is a limited experience, then you can't provide that insight. And and then it becomes appropriation, because you're literally basing it off of just a stereotype and not off of a really lived sort of like earnest understanding of what that person may have to deal with.
Absolutely. I totally agree. We've talked about a couple different aspects of writing from a character writing from a technical standpoint, but I just want to ask, what are some of your favorite parts about character creation from just a pure creative standpoint? Do you go to any place when you're in this creation standpoint, or just what are just some of those aspects that you really enjoy about character creation? And we'll start with Newton.
So this is not the process itself, but this is more of the effects of the process, is people's reaction to the characters. Because I remember someone at a con came up to me and was like, "Oh, I love Jonas of Crescent City Monsters. He reminds me of my dad." And I'm like, "Wow, really? Okay." So and then other people, when they approach you, they'll talk about your characters and in such a way that they could either relate to or that they have a connection to. So for me, that's one of the coolest parts of when creating characters.
And same for you, Fred. What are some of your favorite aspects of character creation?
I mean, man, this shit is all work. So I don't know if it's ever fun. It's always work.
Yeah, just a little bit, of course.
Yeah, I mean, there are a couple of joys. I think Newton, correct me if I'm wrong. So I don't, if I'm saying something out of pocket, let me know. But because you're not the artist, right? I'm not an artist. You're not an artist.
No,
right?
no. I'm not the artist. No.
So
I'm the same boat as you.
yeah. So the reason I bring that is because I think you'd agree with me. I think for people in our position, one of the most exciting things about creating something is when you see the artist rendering it.
Yeah.
Now that is cool. Now that is cool, especially if you've got a dynamite art. Like you've got some fantastic artists at Dream Theory, and for us, when you see it, it really is special because the thing about writing and the thing about creativity is that, especially in comics, in particular, comics and manga, I don't think enough people appreciate how solitary and lonely it is. Right? It is. It is extremely lonely. I don't care what the situation is, because so much of what you feel and put into it comes from here, and it's hard to even tell people about it. You can talk all day long about it, but no one really will ever feel what you feel when you're creating something, and that's what makes the drama of creating something so heart wrenching. Because at the end of the day, there's I have this thing about athletes and creativity. And I talk about how, like, you can be the best dribbler. Let's say you like basketball. You can be the best dribbler in your family, and you can twirl the ball in your hand and so forth. And that makes you great in your family. And then you might be the best in your neighborhood. And then you might be the best in your local school. You still might not get a scholarship to a college. Let's say you get a scholarship to a college. It might not be a big college like UNC Chapel Hill, my alma mater, or Duke or Kentucky. But let's say you do get those. You still might not get drafted number one or in the first round of the NBA. And then let's say you do get drafted, you might be a bench rider before you get out of the league, before you actually even have the real permanent chance to stay. And if you stay, the average time in the league is like 6 years. And you got people like LeBron James who've been in there for 20 years. Like there's levels to this stuff, right? And so all that heartache you feel in creating stuff, and the momentary joys of, like Newton said, someone comes up to you and is like, man, I love the character, man, it reminds me of this person, that person, or I love the series, or the joy you feel when the artist will give you the image. All of those are transitory, because at the end of the day, the one thing that will actually matter is, did it sell long enough for you to actually be able to realize that potential? Did it sell well enough for you to be able to say, to be talking about it and doing work on it years from now? And that's that's a really, really hard thing to get to. And so it's like I said, it's a really lonely process, because, comedians, for example, they'll do something and they get that immediate thrill of, as will singers, right? Singers, athletes, and some athletes. But when you're creating stuff, especially something like this, it takes a long time. No one's there to clap you on the back of the shoulder or tell you how awesome it is. And you won't know until that thing is printed and shipped or released digitally. And even then, it might not be what you hoped it would be. And it's just always a difficult process. But I do enjoy, for me personally, getting that first bit of art in from the artist. That's a real joy.
Absolutely. We've got two more questions here. One is going to be from the audience watching at home. Jiren the Gray asks, when creating a character, is it effective to create with a team, or is it effective to create the character on your own? We've already kind of touched on this just in a little bit, but I guess we'll ask from the team creating standpoint. Have you guys created with the team to create your characters, and what is that like? How does that differ from creating characters all on your own?
Yeah, I've co-created character Shattered Visions with TJ Sterling. So that was the only book that I've actually, that's not true. I've done it before, but those projects didn't really work out. Yeah. So I don't think there's one way. I don't think the question should be if it's effective to create with a team or without a team, the question should be like, what's your preference, right? Because some people, and this is not a bad thing. It's also a good thing. Need another writer. They need another co-writer with them. Like they feel more comfortable bouncing ideas off somebody, and then having that person tell them like what they think about the idea, and just build back and forth. They like that, and that's how they get their creative juices. So the question is like, are you effective creating characters with somebody or without someone? So I think that's what you should be asking yourself. And usually people know themselves well enough to know if if they're the type of person who can work with somebody or not. Because you'll know if you're a difficult person to work with by, by the time you're an adult. So I think that's what they should be asking themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And same question to you as well, Fred.
I love the last line Newton said, like, by the time you're an adult. And that's the problem, dude. Most of these young people creating stuff aren't adults. They've never had a real job. So they're learning all this for the first time. But yeah, I mean, I think Newton's right. I think the question is a little flawed, and I'm not, blaming the person who wrote the question, but I don't think you really have to. I don't think you can look at it that way. I think creativity is hard no matter what, and
Mm.
it can be effective, but it has nothing to do with whether you're in a team or not. It's all about just kind of like it's kind of like a math problem. I mean, it's like when you have a breakthrough, everything falls into place, and different people that trigger is different for different people. Some people, when they see the character design for the first time rendered by an artist, like it all clicks.
Mm-hmm.
For me, sometimes just getting the name of the series right, just like the minute I have the name, like Saturday AM or Clock Striker or whatever, like it just immediately go, like I'm like, oh, I know exactly what this is. Like the name for me is really important. I don't think there's a right way to look at it, but I will say that building a team is really hard.
Mm.
I mean, that is, I don't give a damn what the situation is. That's extremely hard. If you are doing it for fun, if you're doing it from a company perspective, it is hard. Nothing changes it. Money doesn't change it. Prestige doesn't change it. It's hard because it's all about personalities. It's all about experiences. It's all about sort of like professionalism and maturity.
Mm-hmm.
And all of those are really complicated things to there's no formula for it. It just kind of
Yes.
happens or it doesn't.
Mm. Um, we're approaching our last question here. We've talked about so many different aspects of character creation, everything down from the technical side, the creative side, and even some of the professional side, working in teams and cooperative creation. But the last question I have for you, which is my favorite, is just some tips. Do you guys have any tips that you're willing to part with about character creation to anyone who is looking to create their own story? This could be on character creation from a technical side or even just the creative process itself. And we'll start with you, Fred.
So the question one more time. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So, any tips about character creation? Either it can be just how to create a character technically, or it can be something about the creative process.
I mean, not no. I mean, nothing past what I've already said. I mean, I think at the end of the
Right.
day, it's for me, it's diversity. It's like I want to see things that I've not seen before. And so, like, I'm not interested in just the normal. I want to see things I haven't seen before. And to me, that typically is driven by diversity. And diversity
Gotcha.
does not have to be ethnicity. It can be gender. It can be orientation. It can be setting. But diversity is a key to unlocking story potentials. If you are imagining telling a story and what makes a compelling story, but if you're focused on it in a wrong way, then that doesn't work. I will say that for me, and again, I'm sure this is true for some people, not true for others, but again, inspiration goes a big way, and I think that I think music is great. I think sometimes I set soundtracks and stuff, and I'll just sit in one of my offices and just let the music play, and kind of like I have to work with music playing to kind of just train me, emotionally be in the right space and work. Every series I do or whatever I'm editing, I actually have a different soundtrack for it, and it just helps me focus. If I'm in a coffee shop, I have my headphones on and I'll cue up the playlist. That's probably a weird thing just for me, but but I do find that to be somewhat helpful.
Hmm. Same question to you, Newton. Any tips for character creation?
Yeah, I was gonna say, Fred, it's not a weird thing at all. It would
Mm-mm.
only be weird if it was a CD player you were playing music.
I knew
Oh
it is a
no.
CD player. So the joke's on you, Newton. It is a CD player.
No, the one advice I'd give to people about writing their characters is it kind of goes back to something I touched up on, I think on the first question, was the fact that once you determine your character's personality, you have to make sure that what they do and say matches that personality, right? So if you think, if you know like, let's go back to the shy person, right? They should act shy. Like, you should write things that show their shyness. If they're shy, they should speak in a way that's shy. I'm not sure how a shy person speaks, but you know what I mean, right? So the dialogue should reflect their personality. I think that's really important. The dialogue and the action should reflect their personality. That's one advice I would give to people as they're writing stories with their characters. And because there's sometimes I'll watch a TV show or a movie, and they do something that was out of character. I'm like, well,
Mhm.
last season she was all like, nah, this season she's like, this doesn't make any sense, So like when and with TV, it's kind of understandable because they have different writers, so one writer might do something different. But yeah, as a creator yourself, I think you should always try to stay consistent. Keep the character that you have in mind. Um, make sure the dialogue matches. Like, let's say the person's from down south. Make sure the dialogue they sound like they're someone who's southern, right? So things like that. Make sure that the dialogue and the actions matches the character that you're working with.
Absolutely. Those are amazing tips, truly. I think might have even inspired me. You guys definitely gave me something to chew on as well. Um, thank you guys so much for your time. This was an amazing and full panel of just some absolute gems. But for the people at home, one more time, go ahead and give us one more introduction of yourselves, as well as where we can find you. Also, any projects, plug yourselves. Any projects you guys got coming out, we'd love to hear them.
Yeah. So again, my name is Newton Lillevoix. I'm the writer and creator of Keisha Demon Eater, Crescent City Monsters. I self-published on the Dream Fury Comics. um, and also have a book titled Shattered Visions that I co-wrote with TJ Sterling. You can find me on Instagram and Twitter and X, I guess now, and TikTok at Dream Fury Comics. Dream Fury Comics.
Awesome.
Yeah, my name is Frederick Jones. I'm the founder and publisher of Saturday AM. We're the world's most diverse manga brand. Been in business for over a decade now, and we make manga from creators around the world. In fact, we got word last week that we've won some new awards. So we just found out that Gun Hill Volume 2, this is Volume 1, won an award, I believe, for young readers. Apple Black Origins won an award for light novels. This is by Stephanie Williams and of course, the creator of Apple Black White Manga. And then, of course, Clock Striker Volume 2 has won, I think this is now his third award. Volume 1 has won 6 awards. So we're very, very proud of these. And if you want to support them, you can check out our website, www.saturday-am.com, and all of our material is there, including our web app. We also have a trading card game coming. We may have some issues with this because of Trump's tariffs, so God damn it, Trump. But anyway, we'll still be working to develop this stuff soon. So we hope you guys will check out our stuff. You can find all of our stuff on our website or via social media at Saturday AM.
Oh, you're on mute again.
Yeah.
What's a good live stream without some technical difficulties? Thank you, gentlemen, again for coming and sharing your time. Again, guys, please be sure to support these creators, and we'll be right back.